I used to believe that love, real love, was unbreakable. That if you put in the effort, if you fought for it, it would always be enough. Turns out, I was a fool. I wasn't supposed to be here today. Not in this courtroom, not in this situation, not watching the woman I had once called my soulmate sit next to another man, whispering, giggling, exchanging smirks like two teenagers passing notes in class. She didn't even look nervous. That was what got me the most, not the betrayal itself, not even the months of lies, but the sheer ease with which she discarded me. Lenora had always been good at pretending. She could cry on cue, spin a lie so smooth you'd believe it, even when your gut told you otherwise. But today, she wasn't pretending. She was happy. And that's when I knew I had never really mattered to her. A part of me had already suspected it. When I first found out about Emmerich, I told myself she had been weak, that maybe she had gotten caught up in something, that she still loved me deep down. But looking at her now, seeing her sitting there with him, comfortable, glowing, relieved, it crushed whatever delusions I had left. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced my hands to relax. I had almost canceled today, almost let them win. But something inside me refused. I'd stayed up all night replaying everything. Every little sign I had ignored, every moment she had looked at me like I was just background noise. And in the end, one realization had hit me harder than the rest. I had been too easy to betray. I had trusted blindly. I had believed in things that were never real. And now I was going to make sure she understood exactly what she had thrown away. Because there was one thing Lenora didn't know. She thought this was just a simple divorce hearing. She thought she and Emmerich would walk out of here hand in hand, ready to start their new life while I disappeared into the background. She had no idea about the surprise waiting for her. And as I finally stepped inside, as her eyes met mine for the first time in weeks and her smirk faltered ever so slightly, I knew this was going to be a day she'd never forget. The moment I walked in, Lenora's smirk twitched, not much. Just a tiny flicker of something behind her perfectly composed expression. But I caught it. She wasn't expecting me to show up. Oh, she would never admit that, of course. She was too good at the game, too skilled at keeping her mask in place. But I knew her better than she thought I did. And that brief hesitation, that slight shift in her eyes, told me everything. Emmerich, sitting beside her, leaned in and whispered something against her ear, and she laughed. The sound was light, effortless, like nothing in the world could touch her, like today was just another box to check off before she moved on with her perfect little life. And yet, she still hadn't looked away from me. I kept walking, not rushing, not slowing down, just moving with purpose, letting every step echo against the cold tile floor. It was strange. I had imagined this moment so many times, thought about what I would say, what I would do. Would I yell? Would I demand answers? Would I let my anger spill out after months of keeping it bottled inside? But now that I was here, now that I was standing just feet away from the woman who had shattered my life, and the man who had helped her do it, I felt calm. No, not calm. Clear. The kind of clarity that only comes after you've lost everything and finally understand what it all meant. I took my seat across from them, setting my folder down with careful precision. I wasn't here to beg. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to end this the right way. The judge arrived a few minutes later, an older man with tired eyes that had seen far too many cases like mine. A formality, really? The divorce was uncontested. Lenora had made sure of that. She wanted a clean break, a quick escape, a new beginning with Emmerich without the mess of drawn-out proceedings. She thought she was leaving me behind. She was wrong. "Mr. Holloway," the judge began, addressing me. "Apologies for the delay. Are we ready to proceed?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. But before we do, there's something I'd like to present." Lenora frowned, but only for a second before her confident facade returned. "What are you doing, Alan?" she asked, her voice just the right mix of exasperation and amusement, like I was a child causing unnecessary drama. I ignored her. Instead, I opened my folder, pulled out the first document, and handed it to my lawyer, who then passed it to the judge. Silence stretched. Lenora's foot tapped against the floor. Emmerich leaned back, arms crossed, a lazy grin on his face, like none of this mattered. Then, the judge's expression changed. He read the document once, then twice. Then he adjusted his glasses and exhaled slowly, looking at Lenora over the rim of his spectacles. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, his voice measured, "were you aware that your soon-to-be ex-husband has submitted a financial discrepancy report regarding your shared assets?" The smirk vanished from Lenora's face. I saw it happen in real time, the way her mind clicked into overdrive, scrambling to catch up. The confidence she had walked in with, the absolute certainty that she had won, cracked right down the middle. "What? What financial report?" she asked, forcing a chuckle. "That's ridiculous. We already split everything fairly." I leaned forward, lacing my fingers together. Did we? Her eyes darted to mine, the first sign of real panic creeping in, because Lenora knew exactly what I was talking about. She had siphoned money from our joint account for months before I found out about the affair. Small transactions at first. Nothing that would raise suspicion. A dinner here, a spa trip there. But then the amounts got bigger. A sudden business investment in a non-existent company, a loan to a friend who didn't exist. And the best part? She thought she had erased the trail. She thought she had been smarter than me. But I had been watching. I had let her believe she was getting away with it, biding my time, collecting every piece of evidence I needed. And now, as the judge flipped through page after page of documented transactions, her breathing got shallow. "Mr. Holloway," the judge continued, turning his attention back to me, "are you requesting a financial audit before the finalization of this divorce?" I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "Yes, Your Honor. I believe my wife has been less than honest about our shared assets, and I'd like to ensure a full, thorough review before we move forward." A sharp inhale. Lenora's jaw clenched. I could see the storm building inside her. Emmerich, for his part, finally looked interested. His smirk was gone, replaced with a frown as he whispered something to her under his breath. And in that moment, I knew I had shattered whatever fantasy they had built together. The real fun was only beginning. For years, I had thought Lenora was the most intelligent person I knew. She could weave words together like silk, spin a story so smoothly that even the most skeptical person would believe her. And the worst part? She made me believe them too. Now, watching her unravel in real time, I realized something. She wasn't as smart as I had thought. She had just never been challenged. "Your Honor, this is absurd," Lenora said, her voice sharp, strained, but still holding on to the last threads of confidence. "Alan is just trying to delay the inevitable. There is no financial misconduct. We've already gone through all this." "Then you shouldn't have a problem with the audit," I cut in, my voice even. Her mouth snapped shut. Emmerich shifted beside her, his foot tapping against the courtroom floor. For the first time since this entire process had started, He looked nervous. I could feel the tension radiating off them. He was no longer grinning, no longer leaning back with that casual arrogance, because now he was realizing what I had always known. Lenora was never as careful as she thought she was. The judge sighed, rubbing his temple. "Mrs. Holloway, if your finances are as transparent as you claim, then there is nothing to worry about. But given the documentation presented, I am inclined to approve the audit before proceeding with the divorce." Lenora exhaled through her nose, her fingers curling into fists on the table. I could almost hear her teeth grinding. She wanted to argue desperately, but she couldn't because she knew I had her cornered. She knew there was no logical way to fight this without making herself look worse. So instead, she did what she did best. She played the victim. She turned her gaze toward the judge, blinking rapidly like she was holding back tears. "Your Honor, I don't understand why Alan is doing this. I thought we were handling this maturely. I thought he wanted to move on." Her voice broke just a little, just enough to sound believable. "I don't know why he's dragging this out, why he wants to humiliate me in front of everyone." There it was, the perfect lie. And God help me, if I hadn't lived through the past year, if I hadn't already seen through the mask, I might have believed her too. She was good. She had done this before. She had won before. Just not this time. The judge exhaled, glancing between us. "Mr. Holloway, is your intent here to prolong the proceedings unnecessarily?" I met his eyes without hesitation. "Not at all, Your Honor. I simply want what's fair." Lenora turned her gaze to me then, and for the first time that day, I saw it. Real fear. Not because she was scared of losing money, not because of Emmerich, but because she knew, deep down, that I wasn't the same person she had manipulated for the past 10 years. She no longer had control over me, and that terrified her more than anything. The judge gave a slow nod. "Then the audit will proceed. Court is adjourned until further review." I barely heard the sound of the gavel striking. All I saw was Lenora's expression as she stood up, gripping her purse like it was the only thing grounding her. This wasn't the ending she had planned. This wasn't how she had imagined walking away from me. I had taken back control, and for the first time in our entire relationship, she had no idea what was coming next. As soon as the gavel struck, the courtroom erupted into hushed whispers. The lawyers gathered their documents. The judge retreated to his chambers, and the tension in the air grew so thick it felt like a physical force pressing down on the room. Lenora shot up from her seat, her face frozen in something between anger and disbelief. She didn't even look at me at first. No, she turned straight to Emmerich, her so-called knight in shining armor, as if he had the answers to what had just happened. He didn't. Emmerich had been playing a game he didn't even realize he was a part of. Up until now, he had been the other man, the fun distraction, the guy who had won the prize. But now he was just another liability, and he was realizing it too. "You need to fix this," Lenora hissed at him under her breath, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his arm. Emmerich, for all his arrogance, looked like a deer caught in headlights. "How am I supposed to fix it? You told me everything was covered." "Because it was," she snapped. "I don't know how he—" That was when she finally turned to me. For a moment, just a flicker of a second, I saw something raw in her expression. Fear. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a well-practiced mask of irritation. "You're pathetic, Alan. she spat, stepping closer, dragging this out like a bitter little child because you can't handle the fact that I moved on. I tilted my head slightly, taking in the sheer audacity of her words. She had drained our bank accounts. She had carried on an affair right under my nose. She had laughed with her lover in court, acting like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. And I was the bitter one. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to remain calm. If you think this is about bitterness, Lenora, then you haven't been paying attention. Her lips curled into a sneer. Then what is it about, huh? You think you're going to win somehow? Newsflash, Alan, you already lost. That was the moment I felt it. A shift. The kind of shift that only happens when you realize, with absolute clarity, that the person in front of you isn't who you thought they were. The woman I had married no longer existed. Maybe she never had. I smiled, not out of happiness, not out of amusement, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. You keep telling yourself that, I said quietly. And then, before she could get another word in, I turned and walked away. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed, because Lenora had no idea about the second surprise I had in store for her. As I walked out of the courtroom, I could still feel Lenora's eyes burning into my back. She had always been good at controlling situations, bending them to her will, making sure she had the upper hand. But not this time. This time, she was playing by my rules. She just didn't know it yet. The moment I stepped into the hallway, my lawyer, Howard, caught up with me. He was a no-nonsense guy in his late 50s with sharp eyes that had seen every kind of divorce case imaginable. But even he had to admit that mine was special. That went well, he murmured, flipping through his folder. Better than I expected. She didn't see the audit coming. I smirked. Of course she didn't. She thinks she's untouchable. She spent years getting away with things because I was blind to them. But that's over now. Howard gave me a knowing look. I take it you're still going through with the other thing? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a deep breath, letting the weight of everything settle over me. The second surprise, the one Lenora hadn't even considered a possibility. Yes, I said firmly. I am. Howard nodded, tucking his papers away. Then we need to move fast. Once she finds out, she's going to fight like hell. I knew that already. But what Lenora didn't know, what Emmerich didn't know, was that I had been planning this for months. 3 months earlier, I had already suspected Lenora was hiding money. But uncovering where she had hidden it was another story. At first, I thought she was stashing it in secret accounts. That would have been too easy. But then I started noticing patterns, strange little expenses that didn't make sense. Small transfers to companies I had never heard of, withdrawals that never lined up with her spending habits. And then it hit me. She wasn't just hiding money. She was laundering it. Lenora had never been one to take risks, but Emmerich, he was different. He had his hands in a lot of things, most of which weren't exactly legal. And Lenora, my wife, the woman I had once trusted with everything, had decided to mix our marriage finances with his. The moment I realized that, everything changed. I had 2 choices. I could confront her, explode, demand answers, or I could play along. So I pretended I was still the clueless husband. I acted like I was too heartbroken, too defeated to dig into what she was doing. Meanwhile, I started collecting every suspicious transfer, every transaction, every wire that connected our accounts to his. And then I hired a forensic accountant. Back in the present, as Howard and I stepped into the elevator, I could feel my pulse steady. "Do we have enough?" I asked. Howard sighed. More than enough. The audit is just the beginning. Once we present the evidence of financial fraud, the judge isn't just going to freeze the assets. He's going to revoke her right to any marital property. That meant that everything, the house, the cars, the savings, the retirement fund, all of it would be off limits to her. And Lenora, she had no idea what was coming. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Lenora was pacing. Her heels clicked against the tile floor in rapid succession as she chewed at her perfectly manicured nails. A nervous habit she had when things weren't going her way. What the hell just happened? Emmerich asked, rubbing his jaw. You said this was going to be easy. It was supposed to be, Lenora hissed. I don't understand. He's never fought back before. He always just let things happen. Emmerich folded his arms, his patience wearing thin. Well, he's not letting it happen now. What's this about an audit? Lenora clenched her fists. It's nothing. Just a stall tactic. He doesn't know anything. He's just trying to get back at me. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. Because deep down, she knew. She knew she had underestimated me. She just didn't know how badly. I sat in my car outside the courthouse, gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The weight of everything that had just happened hadn't fully settled yet. But I could feel it creeping up on me, slow and steady, like a tide rising around my ankles. For so long, I had been the man who let things slide, the one who compromised, the one who avoided conflict to keep the peace. And where had that gotten me? Betrayed? Used? Tossed aside? Not anymore. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. There was only one call I needed to make. Mr. Holloway. The voice on the other end answered after 2 rings. Are we greenlit? Yes, I said without hesitation. Do it. 1 hour later, Lenora's perspective. Lenora sat stiffly in the back seat of Emmerich's car, her phone pressed to her ear, her perfectly curated life crumbling one piece at a time. What do you mean? They froze the account, she hissed, her voice a barely contained whisper of panic. I mean exactly what I said, her banker replied. There's been a legal hold placed on your assets due to an ongoing investigation. We're not authorized to release any funds until the matter is settled. Her stomach twisted. Investigation? What the hell is he talking about? Lenora shot a glance at Emmerich, but he was too busy scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm raging inside her. Who authorized this? She demanded. There was a long pause. Your husband. Lenora felt the breath leave her lungs. Alan, the man she had always viewed as predictable, weak, a pushover. He did this. Listen, there has to be some mistake, she forced out, fighting to keep her voice steady. I want this reversed, now. I'm afraid that won't be possible, the banker said. Until the audit is complete, your funds are inaccessible. The call ended before she could say another word. Lenora sat frozen, her phone still clutched in her hand. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Emmerich finally looked up. What's wrong? She swallowed hard, debating whether or not to tell him the truth. But then his phone buzzed, and everything got worse. Emmerich's perspective. At first, Emmerich thought it was just another routine email. One of his many side hustles, a business deal, maybe even an update on his offshore investments. But as he skimmed the message, his pulse spiked. Lenora was talking, saying something about their money being frozen, but he barely heard her, because his accounts had just been flagged too. He clicked the second message, then the third. His entire operation, The carefully constructed financial web he had spent years maintaining was suddenly under scrutiny. The audit wasn't just about her. Alan had gone after him too. Back to my perspective. I leaned against my car, watching the courthouse doors from a distance, waiting. Any second now, it would happen. And then, there it was. Lenora burst outside, her eyes wild, scanning the parking lot. She wasn't composed anymore. She was unraveling. For the first time since this all started, she knew what it felt like to lose control. I smiled. Not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but because after everything she had done, after the months of deception, manipulation, and betrayal, I had finally evened the playing field. And we weren't done yet. I watched from a distance as Lenora stood frozen in the parking lot. Her phone gripped so tightly in her hand that I half expected it to shatter. I could almost hear the gears in her head turning, scrambling for an explanation, an out. But there wasn't one. Emmerich stormed out behind her, his face flushed red, his usual arrogance replaced with panic. He was waving his phone around like a lunatic, barking into it as if sheer force would reverse what had just happened. It wouldn't. I had made sure of that. I took my time walking toward them. No rush, no theatrics. Just slow, deliberate steps. I wanted her to feel every second of this. She turned as soon as she saw me, her expression flickering between rage and something much deeper. Fear. "You bastard," she hissed. I raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a greeting, considering you were the one laughing in court an hour ago." Her nostrils flared. "You froze my accounts." I tilted my head. Technically, the court did. I just pointed them in the right direction. Lenora let out a humorless laugh, shaking her head. "So that's what this is? Revenge? You think ruining me is going to make you feel better?" I leaned in slightly. "You ruined yourself, Lenora. I just stopped cleaning up after you." She opened her mouth, but Emmerich cut her off. "How did you do this?" he demanded. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that almost resembled disbelief. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I sighed. The realization was dawning on him that he had completely underestimated me, that Lenora had, that they had both played a game without understanding the stakes. "You thought I wouldn't fight back," I said evenly. "You thought I'd just roll over and let you both walk away with everything. That's how little you thought of me." Neither of them said a word, so I kept going. "You could have walked away clean. You could have had your fun, built your little fantasy together. But instead, you got greedy. You stole from me. You laundered money through our accounts. And you expected me to just disappear." Lenora shook her head. "You have no proof." I smirked. "Oh, I have proof. That's why the accounts are frozen. That's why your assets are under investigation. And that's why, by the end of this, you're going to have nothing." The words landed harder than a slap to the face. Lenora's face turned ghostly pale. Emmerich took a step back, muttering something under his breath, his hands balling into fists. Not in a way that scared me, but in a way that told me he was already planning his escape. Because now he realized something too. This wasn't just Lenora's problem anymore. He was tied to her, to the mess she had created, and soon, to the fallout. The unraveling. Lenora let out a shaky breath, her confidence cracking piece by piece. "You don't want to do this, Alan. You think you're punishing me, but you're just proving that you're just as cruel as you think I am." I laughed, a real, deep laugh. "Cruel? No, Lenora. You were cruel. You cheated, you stole, you lied. I'm just making sure you don't get rewarded for it." Her lip trembled. It was subtle, but I saw it. I saw the exact moment she realized she had lost. Emmerich, however, wasn't quite as sentimental. He suddenly straightened, his eyes darting around the parking lot like a man calculating his next move. "You're on your own," he muttered. Lenora whipped around. "What?" "You heard me," he said coldly. "This is your mess. I didn't sign up for this level of drama." Lenora's mouth fell open, but Emmerich was already walking away. Just like that. Just like she had walked away from me. I let it sink in for her, let her stand there, watching as the man she had risked everything for left her standing in the wreckage. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Lenora stood there, completely still, as Emmerich walked away without looking back. It was surreal. Watching her be on the receiving end of abandonment. She had spent months planning to leave me in the dust, carefully crafting her future with him. And now she had nothing. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control. I should have felt sorry for her. A part of me expected to. But standing there, seeing the way her hands trembled, the way her carefully curated world crumbled in real time, I felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. Just closure. She turned back to me slowly, as if she were still processing what had just happened. Her eyes searched mine, maybe looking for some kind of weakness, some small crack in my armor that she could exploit. There was none. "You really did it," she whispered. I nodded. I did. She let out a shaky breath, crossing her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. "So, what happens now?" I studied her for a long moment before answering. Now you deal with the consequences of your choices. The financial audit will go through. The court will see the fraud for what it is. You'll lose everything you took, and when that happens..." I paused, making sure she was really listening. "You'll finally understand what it feels like to be discarded." She flinched just a little, just enough for me to know that for the first time, she actually felt it. Not just the loss of money, not just the humiliation of being abandoned, but the weight of all of it. She had spent so long playing games, manipulating people, believing she would always come out on top. Not this time. This time, she was alone. The silence stretched between us, and for a moment, I thought she might fight back, that she might try one last, desperate attempt to shift the blame, to spin the story in her favor. But she didn't. Instead, her shoulders slumped, and she looked away. I took that as my cue to leave. For so long, I had been waiting for this moment, the moment she finally realized that she couldn't hurt me anymore. And now that it was here, I had nothing left to say. So I turned around,